Over the weekend, President Joe Biden delivered the commencement address at the U.S. Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland, and I'm sure you know where this is going, folks, because it almost always goes there and ends up there. At the very beginning of his remarks, he told the graduating class a story about his own life and his personal tie to their prestigious institution. Listen carefully.
As I was told, the class of '72 is here. I was appointed to the Academy in 1965 by a senator who I was running against in 1972. Never planned it that way. I wasn't old enough to be sworn in. I was only 29 years old when I was running. I didn't come to the Academy because I wanted to be a football star, and you had a guy named Staubach and Bellino here. So I went to Delaware.
Oh boy, where do I even start? That little ditty sounded odd when I first heard it. I had never heard that Joe Biden was ever awarded a coveted appointment to Annapolis. We would have heard that before, right? Seeing as how he's been in Congress for 47 years and ran for president 3 times and is very fond of talking about his past successes, even when we can't find those actual successes anywhere, except in old Joe Biden's feeble memory pockets of his rapidly deteriorating gray matter. So I did a little research, a little investigating, so to speak, and wow, check this out. Turns out I'd never heard it before because it wasn't true. Biden tells the story this way. In 1965, Senator Caleb Boggs appointed him to the Naval Academy, but he opted to pursue football at the University of Delaware instead. Then Biden, who had gone to the Academy, would have still been on active duty if that were true. But he defeated Boggs in 1972, so the dates just don't add up. So they were asked, and when the White House was asked about the big lie, they promised to look into it, but as you might expect from this White House, all we've gotten is crickets. Shocker. President Biden has no shame. Think about this for a minute. Nowhere should there be more honesty, integrity, and respect than when addressing graduates at the U.S. Naval Academy. These young men and women will be putting their lives on the line for our country. They deserve the respect of the commander-in-chief, not some salad bowl of bull spit he fondly and erroneously recalls about his early years. Biden claimed that he received an appointment to Annapolis in 1965. That is actually the year he graduated from the University of Delaware. So where the hell is that singing lady from the Ministry of Truth? I mean, the disinformation KGB board lady.
Pondering is really quite ferocious. It's when a huckster takes some lies and makes them sound precocious by saying them in Congress or a mainstream outlet. So disinformation's origins are slightly less atrocious.
Atrocious? Yeah, that one. She bailed quickly as soon as she saw how many times Biden was lying to the people. But who can blame her? And this wasn't the first time Joe Biden's been a lion. No, far from it. Turns out the American president has a long history of fabricated stories about his early years. And actually, what makes Biden's deceptions and tall tales unique are their volume and frequency. This is a fun one where Senator Biden got heated up at a fan who had the audacity to challenge Biden's intellect. Well, behold, a tsunami of angry Joe Biden fabrications of his academic achievements. Listen.
I went to law school on a full academic scholarship, the only one in my class to have a full academic scholarship. Went back to law school and, in fact, ended up in the top half of my class. I was the outstanding student in the political science department at the end of my year. I graduated with 3 degrees from undergraduate school and 165 credits, only need 123 credits.
I can't stop counting. Well, let's ask the media at the time and Sam Donaldson how that turned out.
Biden now concedes he did not graduate in the top half of his law school class, that he does not have 3 degrees from college, and that he was not named outstanding political science student in college.
Newsweek says Biden actually went to school on a half scholarship, ended up near the bottom of his class, and won only 1 degree, not 3.
Thanks, Sam. The American people needed to find out that the presidential wannabe at the time had to redo a paper after accusations of plagiarism and that he graduated near the bottom of his class. Surely they'd never vote for such a lying, plagiarizing fool into the Oval Office, would they? And when then Senator Joe Biden was being pressed by the media over charges of plagiarism during that same 1987 presidential failed campaign, he called those charges false. He went so far as to deliver the lie by getting really heated up at the very suggestion he would plagiarize. Except when they replayed his comments, they matched nearly every single word of a speech given by the Labour Party leader in Great Britain. Decades and decades of misinformation. That dismantling of the exaggerations and outright fabrications is jarring even all these years later. Biden evidently learned nothing from any of this, failing to control his character flaw for the rest of his career. For his estranged relationship with the truth, Biden has been rewarded with the vice presidency and now the presidency. I mean, the man ran for president on being a refreshing antidote to Donald Trump's bombastic comments, but Biden's desire to carry the torch of honesty forward should never have been taken seriously. He can't open his mouth without some sort of fabrication flying out. He can't help himself. He's pathological. Clearly, Biden has a pathological need to connect with his audiences to the extent that he's willing to fabricate stories and memories that allow him to prove he's one of the people, a regular Joe, so to speak. But these stories are too often made up, and he doesn't seem to care that we all know it. That's the definition of pathological, folks, right there. So what I'm saying is, yes, Joe Biden is a liar, and furthermore, he's a pathological one at that. He loves to add drama and to add effect and to add personal touches, even when none of it is true. And look out. When Biden's temper flies, here come the lies, deceptions, and totally made up ideas.
We have a very different view than Senator Scott of Republicans that want to raise taxes on the middle-class families and want to include half the small business owners in that.
Just no truth to any of that. None of that. Is it any surprise that his pattern of readiness and willingness to deceive has followed him throughout his political career all the way into the Oval Office? He's been doing this sort of thing his whole life, and clearly none of it has impeded his rise to the presidency, and that is amazing. How many times did we hear from candidate Biden that his son Hunter did nothing wrong?
My son has not made money in terms of this thing about, what are you talking about, China?
All right, yeah, right. What's this then? Or how about when Joe Biden sat down with ABC's George Stephanopoulos, that right there, when you sat down with George Stephanopoulos to talk about the withdrawal of troops from Afghanistan, remember this?
All troops are supposed to be out by August 31st. Even if Americans and our Afghan allies are still trying to get out, they're going to leave?
We're going to do everything in our power to get all Americans out and our allies out.
No, there he said it. And if there are American citizens left, we're going to stay until we get them all out. Remember that? Remember that? Well, he lied about that too. They just bailed. More disinformation from the commander-in-chief. Except he pulled out of Afghanistan with thousands of Americans left behind to fend for themselves. That's horrendous, by the way. And there are so many examples of Biden lying specifically, trying to make himself appear more like one of the people. In 2020, here was candidate Biden at a campaign rally in South Carolina.
This day, 30 years ago, Nelson Mandela walked out of prison and entered into discussions about apartheid. I had the great honor of meeting him. He walked in, and the most incredible thing I've ever felt in my life. He walked across in that private room with the big table we have in the executive room. And he walked over, and I said, Mr. President, he leaned, I said, thank you.
Yeah. Even PolitiFact gave that statement a pants on fire ranking. And as so many lies have followed him to the Oval Office, here he is again lying about being arrested again. Earlier this year, Biden said this about being in Iraq.
It's amazing what you do. Realize how many lies you say.
Yes, sir.
No, you really do. I've been in and out of Afghanistan, Iran, and Iraq over 50 times, 48 times, and now what we're doing in Ukraine.
Well, you think he'd refrain from that lie because he was caught in one of those a few years ago when he made up a similar story in 2019, and his presidential campaign staff then had to clarify that he had visited the combined countries not 40 or 50 times, he said it a few times, just about half that number, 21 times to be exact. And just this past January, Joe Biden traveled to Georgia to attack the new voter integrity law in the state. He invoked the civil rights battles of the 1960s.
Generations of students who walked these grounds, but I walked other grounds because I'm so damn old I was there as well. They think I'm kidding, man. Seems like yesterday, the first time I got arrested. Anyway.
There's no evidence that the 46th president of the United States was ever arrested. He is, however, guilty of once again fabricating his past. This man has a terrible habit of lying in public and will continue to call them out, all those lies, as we see them. I know there are far more than we had time to cover in this monologue, but fear not, we hold him accountable as we go. Oh, I almost forgot. He was a truck driver.
And anyway,
and if we
I
don't
used to drive an 18-wheeler, man.
Yeah.
Oh, I wish
yeah.
I got to.
Except he wasn't. I just can't, folks. Just can't.